All right. So here we are, Seascapes number 3 on this cool breezy day. I love feeling that wind come in behind me. Today we have a lovely sunset looking at Atlantic City. This photograph that I sent you guys was taken from the beaches in Ocean City, looking toward Atlantic City, which all of those mirrored glass buildings are reflecting that bright orange sunlight, which is really fun and really nice. And you get those little hints of it in the wet sand, which we're going to look at that today. We're going to work on keeping it soft, meaning when we have all of these wonderful colors in the sky, but you want it to look as light and airy as it looks on your image, we have to practice our pressure. Today is going to be all about pressure, and most of it's going to be super, super light in touch, because we want those colors to sing individually and yet play together. If you push them in too hard, they're going to go flat. They'll make a new color, but all those little colors are reflecting in that cloud front, right? They're reflecting off of that bright sunlight, and we need to gently layer them. And then we don't want the marks, because this cloud front is really soft and smooth, right? There's no big lumpy cloud. It's just a soft ball of color in the sky. So we want to try to represent that softness. And then when we get down to the water and the wet sand, it's not much different, because all of those edges are pretty soft too. So our first layer, when we get to it, is going to be, I have my pipe insulation cut up. So I'll be using pipe insulation, and then I will be using fingers, ring finger and pinky finger, just to kind of keep it super, super light. So I don't crush the colors together. I want to keep them separate, but intermingling. They're talking to each other. Please take note. Again, the time of the day is a big part of this. Not only does it create all that color, the crash in the waves, those little rumbly waves that are coming in, the crash is not white. It is blue. So try to get out of your head about crash is white. We're not going to have any white. And there's not going to be any bright light in here. It's all those warm, goldeny scarlets and salmons, all those wonderful colors in there. And as we go, we'll talk about blending colors to get the right color, because we all know yellows can be a little bit persnickety. They're too lemony, they're too creamy, they're too orangey, so all that kind of stuff. So we'll be layering in quite a bit. So for those of you who like to touch your painting a lot, today's your day, because we'll be painting a lot. Hey, that's for you, Linda. So it's all good, right? I'm going to go ahead and switch cameras. I don't want photographs. Oh, there's photographs on there. Oh, okay. Sorry. My computer likes to think for me, so I turned on the camera and it downloaded the pictures that I have. I'm preparing for the Lang's Garden Center show. That's on Sunday. So I've been painting some new florals, 6 of which were not demos that I just did myself. So some brand new stuff there. Okay. So it looks like it's a little crooked, but it's not. It's just the angle of the camera. So I'm working on today, as usual, mounted UArt. This is, I'm running out of paper, so I'm using what I have. This is a 12 by 12 square. I chose that Well, based on what I had, let's be real. I didn't really, I have 9 by 12, but I wanted a little more room because I wanted to make sure I had enough room to represent all of those colors in the sky, as well as that glorious little beefy part of the reflection down front. So I wanted something a little taller than 9, but I thought 12 was kind of a nice end point. So 12 by 12, here we are. I did end up raising the horizon line just a little bit. So I'll probably lose a little bit of the blue that's up there. But I will have a lot of the wet sand and water up front. And then I left my photo reference. I left all this information here, but in reality, I'll be cutting this down. But I wanted to see all those colors back there. So some tricky things about today, these dark colors, the dark sand, the dark water that's underneath all of this reflection. It's a little bit of a balance because those dark colors can get in the way of those nice bright colors, which if you look at the photo, you do have those pinks and oranges and yellows, and they're all kind of playing together in this one little strip. So along with that navy blue, and it's a navy blue, so that navy blue can really get in the way of those light colors. So again, very gentle touch today, folks. We're going to keep it nice and light for a little bit. I haven't picked out any colors yet. I'm just putting on my gloves in a bottle real fast. I'm just kind of observing some of the things happening at the horizon. There's some parts that kind of blur, obviously, because it's so far away. So you have this, it looks clearly like something like a jetty or a fishing pier or something that's jutting out just a touch right in front of the buildings. And then it almost looks a little hazy right under the buildings. That line kind of blurs. So I'm not going to have a super sharp line under there. So I'll be aware of that. The horizon itself is almost a little bit blurred. So it's a little difficult to tell the difference between the water and the sky. I do know that right at the horizon of the sky is that lovely violet lavender color. And then it starts to build into that beautiful kind of scarlet hot pink, into the salmon, into the orange, into the yellow. So it's a lot of information happening in a really small amount of space. So that's pretty much where I'll start, is at that horizon line. So take a minute, look for your colors, look for what you're going to use. I'm going to pull a couple of colors that are tried and true, and we'll get started. And remember, your first layer can always be a little bit more bold and a little bit darker, and then we'll lighten it up on top and we'll get that sparkle in there. But if you're worried that your colors are a little too in your face, don't worry. Go ahead and start with a little bit of in your face, and we can always calm it down. And also, I do love some skin tones. Those skin tones, like the shadowy rosy colors of Caucasian skin, are really beautiful in the sky. So if you have a portrait set, look at those too. I'll show you what I pulled in just a second as I get them all out. But yeah, those rosy colors are fun. I have a couple of that might work down there. I have a couple of sparkly yellows, and I don't want them yet. I might use them towards the end, but working with the sparkly pastels are not good in the beginning, because you want that sparkle to sit on top. So if you happen to have any sparkly pastels, don't use them yet. But they do shimmer nicely when you take a photograph with a flash on it. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna pull up a little piece of scrap paper. That's a good one. Like, wait a second, there was a good sheet of paper down there. Nice find. All right, I'm gonna tape up my scrap paper. Today is a good day to have a piece of scrap paper, a piece of test paper. So we don't oversaturate the tooth, and you can test out some colors. I'm gonna put mine down over here. Try and keep the markings up top. So I've got, for the first layer, again, things are pretty bright. So I have this, that's a pretty strong lavender. That's a bit of a dull rose. I might take that out. This is always a fun color. This is like it's closer to magenta. It's got a little pink. It's got a little purple. I'm going to set aside that middle color. That's a little too dull for my taste for this part. That's a nice pink. This is a nice pink. I also went into, this is really bright, but it's the perfect kind of pinky scarlet. It looks a little more blood red on screen, but it's a little brighter. Nice little pinky color. Bright, bright. It's a little muted on camera. It has a little more life in person. It's on the peachy salmony side of things. Actually, then I think I grabbed a couple of, so this is like one shade deeper into salmon. Again, it looks a little dull orange on screen. It is not. So we'll get, and this is yet one shade. It's like we're looking at lipstick colors, looking at makeup. It's a nice, bold orange, orangey yellow. Again, all these colors are looking a little duller because it's a little far away from the camera. When I take a photo later, this is just a new pastel, just a nice little complement to that yellow orange. It's a different shade. Another new pastel and just a nice bold yellow, and then a lighter yellow. I might not use this one just yet or even at all. Okay, my breeze is blowing away my pipe installation. Maybe I don't like my breeze. Okay. I tucked it in there. I have this little shelf in there, but it's pulling them back out. Okay. Now, when it comes to the buildings, I'm not going to be 100% accurate going around them because I will be able to carve in all that information later. So I just want to get in my big color first. I'm not going in a line across. I just kind of want to move it upward a little bit. And it's tucked in even a little bit like some of the shorter buildings. Come on. Go in there. So just a nice little up and down shuffle. Again, just trying to keep away from lines, I'm pretty light in touch. I can see a little bit of tooth through it. I don't want it to go too full because I know I'm going to be layering. All right. I am going to put a little bit of this in there. And this color, this bright kind of scarlety pink, you see it go up into the clouds in multiple locations, right? It's not just one line of it. It kind of dances around. So I'm just going to give a hint of it because this looks, really bold, right? So I'm just going to give a light touch, get it in there. And then I can go on top with which one was darker? This one. So I have the darker pink. Again, I'm pretty light in touch. I can see a lot of the paper through because I need these colors to work together for a little bit. And it's not, this is that third color. It's got a little lavender, a little magenta. It'll come back in handy later. But I am putting a lot of colors down that I'm going to be blending together. So let's start getting into that yellowy orange. So again, pretty bright. But I want that bright so that I can layer the light in on top. I didn't even pull out the blues just yet, which I need to do. I'm going to take a second and do that because I'll let this yellow kind of go up in there. The cloud front, we have the blue sky and then the cloud front, and they have a very subtle way of touching one another, but they're both there. So I need to get a little turquoise in here that's going to play with the yellow to make that green, but it's super light. And I don't want it to go into the gray family. I have all of these turquoise that ends up being a little too gray. This one's pretty good. Again, you can see all the tooth through just laying in this color. So this is on the turquoise side of things. And then I'm going to grab a blue. The blue, because we don't see way up into the sky, the blue is still pretty light. So don't push it to that dark blue into the sunset just yet. You don't really have enough space to see that, but this one's nice. Notice I didn't quite mirror everything yet. A lot of times when we have situations where there's reflections in the water, we go back and forth and we mirror and we take the same colors and we put information top and bottom, top and bottom. Today is a little bit different because we have the light of the sky and then the deepness of the water and the sand underneath. So we still will need to get something down before we get the reflection on top. It's just a little bit different. So I'm not going to work on that just yet. I'm going to keep focusing on the sky for a little bit. So I'm not just going to go in and blend, right? I have a method to this type of blending. I'm going to be doing small circles in between each section, which means I'm probably going to use multiple pieces of pipe insulation so I don't muddy up the colors, okay? So in the marriage point between the lavender, the magenta, and the scarlety color, it's going to be my first circle. So I'm not pushing very hard. I'm just almost setting the color into the tooth, but the circle helps move some of the color around. I don't need to create an entirely new color, but I need to get them laying well with one another. So you can kind of see some of the circles. So then I'll take it and just drag it across. All right. This one's not quite dead yet, but it's a little dark. I'll set it aside and take. So now I can gentle circles between the pinks and the oranges. And then a little swoosh side to side. I want that green and the yellow and the turquoise to blend together, so I can pull some of that up. I lost that one already. You can see the little pieces hanging out. So when your pipe installation gets a little funky, you can see it. Especially when you go light in the touch, then you have more surface, more sanded surface exposed. So it just kind of tinted the sky, laid out how it's gonna overall look. I mean, really, this is kind of realistic too. It's very, very vibrant, but it is possible for this kind of vibrancy. You can certainly leave it here. I'm gonna keep going to soften it. And I'm going to keep my colors out, and then I'm going to start to look for their lighter counterparts. Now, this is again the next trick, because we know pinks can get really dull. We know some of those blues can get really dull, although we don't need a lot of blues. So our friends are going to be our variety of yellows. Those yellows are going to bring that softness into the colors that are below. So take a minute to get there if you're not already. Guys are staring at the back door, so I'm going to let them out. I'm going to start looking for my next layer of colors while you guys are working for a second. Again, I have this little chunk of yellow that I love. I know I love, which is why it's a little chunk. See how bright it is? But then the second I start to move it around, I can start to layer some other lovely things in with it. So that's going to be a good one. This is a little lighter. I'll keep it out. I don't want to confuse with too many pastels, right? We need to keep it simple. It's probably a little too light. So I'm using my tester, reminding myself to use my tester. This is a nice Rembrandt, which will looking a little light. It'll come in handy. I'm kind of testing on both my paper, the scrap paper, and my painting. It's a little risky from time to time, but sometimes you got to see what it is on top of where you're going. Oh, that's a good find. This is like a nice creamsicle. Oh, there we go. That's nice. That'll be a good one. And then lightening up that lavender to get it to be a little bit on the hazy side, but not dull, is always a challenge. This is a nice kind of periwinkle lavendery. So as I gently layer it on top, it looks nice. It's settling some things down. I can build into the softness. All right, I think that's all I need to pull for right now. Yeah. Maybe a couple more blues. I want to get I think I should probably work down from the blue into all that color, you know, because if we think about it, it looks like it's just a gradation up the sky. It's really not. It's really this cloud front that's sitting on top of the blue. So I need to make sure that I get what comes first. So we have the background that's blue comes before all those colors in the clouds. So I need to get some of that settled in. This might take a little bit of, because I'm so gentle with my layers. I don't even have enough to move it around with my finger just yet. Which is fine. Doesn't have to be thick. I'm kind of just gently going over those lines, just blurring that contact line, which is working out nicely, I think, in my opinion. That piece is kind of dead. So on screen, I'm looking at, I can see some of the paper, so I might add a little bit more. Think about that for a second. Just walked by my open set of, that's a nice color. It's vibrant, but it's a little lighter than what we had. Walked by my one of my portrait sets and grabbed the little rosy color. It's a Rembrandt. Let me get a little bit more blue up here. Those of you who know me know I like a smooth sky. I don't like a lot of texture up in the sky. I have to be careful again because there's a lot of tooth exposed right now. So if I go too much with my fingers, I'll regret that later. Okay. I think I'll still mess with that. The turquoise kind of looks like it's part of the clouds, but I'm going to be adding some other colors in there with the yellows and the goldens. So I'm going to leave that turquoise kind of live there for a minute before I change anything. I'm just going to step back for a second because right now there's this huge difference between the top and the bottom of the sky. I don't necessarily want it to be so crazy. So I'm going to just take a step back and see where I want to go. I'm thinking I want to just work my way down a little bit and kind of focus on getting some of that soft golden to blend in all through this next layer. And I'm thinking I might have it still might be a little bright. So still really light in touch as I add, because I don't know. I always want to prepare for not blending it, right? I want to see if I can get away with not blending. Because if I can get away with not blending, I'm going to do that because it just stays a little clearer, a little more natural. Looking for an even lighter yellow than what I had up there. This is closer to the white side of things. Getting even lighter. Like I'll be blending a little bit. I'm going to keep going with my layering to see what I need. Ooh, I don't like that yellow now. This one's going to be good for down here in the water because it's a little bit deeper, like deeper in value, darker in value. See a little bit of that purple going up. Hanging out. Need to get some light in there. So I'm gonna look in my fleshy orange tones. Now these fleshy orange tones too, again, they can get dull. We don't want them to be dull. Next month, by the way, I think you guys know, next month is all about clouds and skies. So that's what the next Zoom session is. And November, I hadn't had a topic yet, but I had a request and I think I'm going to do it, is figures on the beach. So I've had a few paintings lately with just, you know, not portraits, just people on the beach or people in general. So simplifying how to add people to your landscape painting. So I think I'm going to have fun with that one. That'll be November. I'll send out information for that later. So speaking of skies, so a lot of times we have that beautiful salmon color in the sky, and you're looking in your orange and you're looking in your pink and you're looking in your yellow. But a lot of times it's a combination of all of the above, you know, so look at your orange and your yellow together and then add a little pink. And you really are mixing colors on your paper because you need to get, a lot of times you need all of those colors in there to get what you want. So I'm adding this bright yellow in here because I know I'm going to be mixing it. I know the bright yellow isn't down there, but I need it to work with others. I'm going to add some pink right on top of it. And I haven't blended in a little while. So what you're seeing is just a lot of hodgepodge, but look how it started to change all of those colors really nicely. There's not a lot of definition in these clouds, so I'm not looking for any sharp edges, but feel free to add like a spark of light coming through there. That's always fun. Once I get to this point where I have all of these colors down, you know, you might want to, you think about, okay, maybe I should grab some more pipe insulation, but this is where we really need to focus on the gentle touch. If I were to come in with pipe insulation right now and just kind of go to town, I'm going to have a big muddy mess, and we don't want mud in the sky. We want to keep it light and airy, still have plenty of tooth to add more layers for sure. But less, unless you're working on stormy skies, less is better in these gentle sunsets. So I'm going to start with my pinky. Just a little gentle shuffle. See how the pigment spreads. Sometimes, you know, you realize you have to add more because it's not going anywhere. So if you're really struggling, if like what I just did, that gentle, just a gentle cotton ball of a wisp kind of a touch, and the pigment's not going anywhere, chances are you have to add a little bit more, but I'm going to keep going before I add any more pastel. because I might move stuff up, right? I'm still going to kind of keep a little bit of a side to side shuffle now. Just gently setting things in place. Some of it I can kind of sweep up a little bit to get some of that motion. Doing a little bit of a circular motion there with that lavender. All right, now I'm going to step back and take a look. It's getting there. It's getting there. Slow and steady on this one, right? Can't be in too much of a hurry for these delicate skies. How's everybody doing? You've been going for about 40 minutes now, which time is flying. Make sure to take breaks if you need it. Couple of my favorite colors are down to just mere slivers now of pastel because they work so well. This is a nice little peachy pink, and just kind of drag over the whole thing and soften it up. So, you know, I do this to myself, so I say this to you guys out loud too, is don't get hung up on matching colors from the photograph. You know, cameras sharpen things, cameras make things darker, especially when there's color in the sky. I mean, you could go really crazy in the sky. So at some point, you just have to do what makes you happy. And if that's to keep it crazy and vibrant, then go for it. If you want to tone it down and make it more subtle and gentle, go for it. I'm kind of somewhere in between right now. I'm playing with a lot of the pinks and whatnot. At some point though, soon, I'm going to switch to working on the bottom. So the whole sky doesn't need to be completely finished because we do have a lot of work to do down in the water. So the whole point of Seascapes, right, is water. So once we get the water in there, then the sky, the look of the sky kind of changes a little bit. So if you're not 100% happy in the next few minutes before we, you know, when we go on to the bottom, don't worry about it. It'll, we'll have plenty of time to adjust once we get more information in. I'm touching again. I know this is probably crazy for some of you. I don't normally, at this point, I usually stop touching. But like I said, I like a smooth sky. So I feel like right now that I want to lighten up the horizon, but I'm not going to fuss with that just yet because I have a whole haze thing going on here. So with the water, so I might end up having to, when I put in the other colors down below, this lavender might be just right. So I'm gonna leave that be. I think I'm gonna leave everything just as is right now. Gonna add any more to that. So whenever we do colorful skies, there's always so many pastels sitting out. So I know I have a lot sitting out right now. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 22 different sticks are hanging out right now. And that's just for the sky. So there's so many subtle nuances. You got a little crazy. All right, now I'm going to think about, does anybody need a break before I move on to the bottom? Is everything's coming along? Okay. Nothing in the chat. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start thinking about colors, right? So when I look, you know, generally when we speak about water, if it's really deep water, we like to get something darker down below so the light can sit on top. This is no exception. However, the time of day complicates it. Like I said in the beginning, all of these light colors playing with all of these dark colors can get a little overwhelming. So we're not going to go as dark as we normally would. Even though this whole left side that curves down with the wet sand is pretty darn dark, this will be dark. But the water might not be so dark when we get started here. Let me take a minute and look at colors for a second on my end. And it is different. So, you know, the wet sand without water, that's just wet. So this time of day, it's no longer beige or brown or tan or whatever you want to call it. It's just this dark gray, which can be a little difficult to kind of look at, but it matches in value. It matches like the navy blue shadow that's back in here and the little bits of navy blue that pop up into the backwater here. So, you know, we have to think about, this has more of a gray and this has more of a blue, but they could end up being the same stick. It could end up being the same stick of navy, maybe with a little bit of gray on top, or a gray or navy, because those happen a lot. That gray navy gets a little dull from time to time. All right. One thing that I ran into when I was doing some floral paintings was some of my navies have a little bit of green in them, like the turquoise teal, the teal kind of gray or green in it, which can really mess up when you try to put something light up next to it. So I'm just going to gently place this one. This one says it's a blue violet. I normally don't have wrappers on, as you guys know, but this one still happens to have one. Super light in touch. Just gonna hint at it up here. I don't want to. I'll use this one to get some definition back there in a minute, but for right now, you know what? I'm going to pause the recording for a second. I'm going to refocus the camera. It looks a little blurry. Let me refocus that. Okay. So working on getting that dark color in there. You know, this is one of those times I'm almost tempted to grab some rubbing alcohol to set some of this in place. Because I don't want Actually, I think I might do that, changing things up as we go here. I'm just putting a little dab, the same blue that I put in the water. It's paper curled. But it's underneath a lot. Like, even though the water starts, that reflection starts to make its way down on to closer to the edge of the paper, it's still underneath there. So what I want to do, I think I'm going to go ahead and wash this in, and then I might spread some of it so there's a little tint. I think that's going to help out a lot. So let me get that ready. Sometimes you just got to do what the painting tells you to do versus what you thought you were going to do in the beginning. Just a little bit, but this way I can have some of that tint help me out. Do a little extra work for me. So I'll start up here. I don't mind a drip, but I do want to control it as it gets closer to the horizon. I don't want to mess with the horizon colors. Just want to gently put things in place, right? I've got a softer brush. I don't have a stiff one. So it's nice and soft and keeps everything more of the watercolor feel for me. You can see I'm just kind of tinting it a little bit. This line can be nice and sharp still. And I can drag it out a little bit. There's a lot of pigment over here, so I'm going to get this situated. I'm using directional strokes, right? I'm going to keep things in the direction that they're moving. I'm definitely going to have to add more back to the sand, but this is just a nice start, I think. I think this was a nice little change to put in here. Because I was using the unison, it has a little more pigment to it that's going to help spread a little bit further.
Come here. Come here. Come on. Come here. Come here, Ella. Come on.
A little bit of a hint of it here.
Oh.
All right, I'm going to pause the recording while this dries because, you know, nothing like recording paint drying. So once again, you know you're dry when you touch and it doesn't come off on your fingers. If it was wet at all, your finger would have the pigment there. So we do not. Now the trick. What do we work on first? So I'm going to focus for a hot second on the buildings and this little, looks like a fishing pier, maybe, possibly. And it looks like, you know, a couple little houses. So just little notches of color, those grays and those neutrals, just to kind of get a hint of something that lives in the background over here on the shoreline. And I'll get a couple of these buildings put in place. And the reason is, then once we get going, we know where reflections are going to be, how strong they're going to be, that kind of stuff. And then I think I'll work from my horizon down. I'll save all this juicy part for the next round of things that I put in. I want to get all the blues in, getting some of that rumbly crash in. And it is all rumbly. There's nothing big and splattery about. I mean, maybe this one little wave in here has a little bit of craziness to it, but nothing that we can really see. So I don't think it has to really be there, you know? I mean, and the area is so small for me to physically add the splash could be a little overwhelming. So I'm not going to do that today. All right. I have some nice bright yellowy orange that I'm just going to start with and just get some of those bigger buildings notched in there. And I can always add to or lighten up. There's all kinds of colors reflecting in there. It's not just the yellow, but I want to get it in there. This is the tiniest little piece, and it's kind of a gray, a nice blue gray. Good place to start for a neutral. But again, I'll lighten up in spots and add little bits of information. But I do like this, that nice blue gray kind of a thing for horizon stuff, you know. The horizon, especially this one's pretty far away, so the horizon can get pretty muted. So your nice blue grays are a good thing. Oh, this might be a nice blue for the crash. I grabbed a blue. That's a little nice blue for the crash. I'm going to set that aside. To those. Not a lot of lavender up in there, but I'm grabbing lavender anyway, right? It's fun. It's a nice color to have. Kind of crazy lights in there. A little too yellow. So my goal is to be specifically generic, you know what I mean? Like, so if somebody says, somebody's imagination can go, oh, I know exactly what that is, what that building is, or what that building is, without being so in your face detailed. I mean, that it gets a little difficult when it's so small. But you know, people relate to your paintings how they want to. I had a painting and I did, it was of Palm Beach, Florida. And somebody local said, oh, I know exactly where that is. They thought it was something here. So I'm like, yep.
Yep.
Exactly what it is. And that's, you know, because something relatable to it. There's a lighter beigey color in here. Beigey colors can be a nightmare, right? Because you can go to yellow or to mustard, which I just did, or you could go to tan or to whatever. But it's like a yellowy beige. No, that could be it. It's a little dull, but now the colors kind of blend into one another a little bit. So let me see, I need to get a little closer over here. I left a little gap. I was hoping it was gonna stay cooler for longer, but they said it's gonna get hot again this weekend. I'm not ready for freezing and snow, but I am ready for a sweatshirt. Just a quick,
Yeah, right.
you know?
The only thing is it's so nice on the beach right now.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I haven't been back over since September happened, and I need to get over there a little bit. It is part of
Yeah,
the
you
part of
should.
living here.
The beach is nice and the water is warm.
Is
I
it
heard
now?
that.
Oh, great.
They said
Finally,
it on
right?
the news that because people were like jumping in and there was the rip currents and people had to be rescued a lot over the weekend because the lifeguards were off duty.
Saw
And,
that. How
uh,
is it down there, Linda? How's
Oh,
it?
it was
rip-
lovely. I
Yeah.
went yesterday. It was great.
No big current? No big
No,
rip?
I went a little later. I got there at 1:40 and we
Hmm.
went like to the left of the cove because Kirsten had her dogs because they were going away.
Uh-huh.
You know. So there were no, I didn't go in yesterday though. But I went a couple days ago and oh my God, I've been waiting all year for that kind of.
Warm. Yeah.
yeah, it was so cold. We didn't really get over there a lot this summer, like we said we would. Gabby promised, and then we just, all of a sudden summer's over. You're like, wait, what happened? All right, I was just kind of throwing in the nice medium blue I put up in the sky first. I put down on top of the navy, just to start building up some of that information there. Gonna lighten this up a little bit. I'm looking at the photo reference, looking at the values, looking at how everything kind of plays together. I haven't touched anything just yet in terms of blending. Not yet. I probably will have to settle some of that out because the texture of the paper is pretty noticeable for right now. Get some of that. So this is a bit of a gray blue that I'm throwing in over here for the sand, the underneath here. It has more gray than that initial color that I put down. But I think it'll be necessary. Just kind of like the sky. I'm just going to start piling in some of these colors here. And, we talk about the deep water and needing to go a little bit darker so we can set stuff on top. Well, all of this wet sand, you have the low water rolling in, and then the sand that's super saturated, super soaked, and then that's wet but doesn't have water sitting on top. We don't have to go too much information underneath. We have a little bit down here because you can see the sand underneath, but as we get up into the brighter reflections, we can go pretty close to how we would the sky in some spots where we can just put down that initial color. I'm seeing things like this magenta color hanging out right in here. So I can start laying down some of those colors from up top in certain spots. This is that rosy scarlet color. I'm going to add some orange to the top of it to get it to be more of what I want. There's lots of subtleties happening all at once in all these colors. And it gets a little tricky, gets a little scary. It can get a little muddy because we've got that deep dark right next to the light. And we don't want to get ahead of ourselves or carried away. Put some more pink back on top there. I probably have to lighten that up a little bit. Now it gets into that turquoise. So I'm kind of approaching this similarly to the sky, where I'm just getting that information in there and I'll adjust the colors as we go. Should have saved that orange for the building reflection. So in my mind, I'm kind of breaking things down into segments here, you know. I know that I still need to do the reflection. I know I still have a lot of crash and crumble and rumble to do. I know there's going to be other layers that come in after this. So stepping back, layout wise, this is where I want to be. These are all still pretty good starts here for everything. So just like the sky, I'm going to use some pipe insulation to set some things in place. And I'm going to be super careful. There is a little bit where it kind of goes into one another, but I want to be careful with that. I want to wait for those gentle marriage points for a little bit longer. So when I set these into the paper with the pipe insulation, just kind of smoothing it in, I'm not going to let them really touch there just yet. I think what I'll end up doing is adding a little bit of lavender in between the two, and that will help marry those strong values together. So the first thing I'm going to do is just, oops, that's a used one. Just gently set my pipe insulation down and give it just a nice drag across the horizon. Just to smooth that out a little bit. Ended up being a little bit lighter than it probably should. So let me add a little bit. That. And a little bit of this initial color. And I think I can do that again gently. That's a little better. Okay, I could fuss with that a little more after, but that's starting to look like how I want it to be. Again, just that gentle kind of shuffle of directional marking. Some of it's just going to be a nice simple side to side, but where I kind of started to lay that rumble in, I want that to kind of start to go up a little bit. So I'm using the pipe insulation to help dictate the motion. It's pretty flat So I'll keep it nice and flat. Since I was just in some blue, I'm gonna stay with the blue. You can almost hear it's like a shoe shine, you know, when you get that swip back and forth. I feel like I'm polishing shoes right now. Because I don't really want big, long, fast moving. You know, when you have that long stroke, it makes it look like things are moving really fast. When you slow it down, you give it a little shuffle back and forth, slows it down. Time for a new piece. I see little remnants of it hanging out. Perfect timing, transitioning into all that color. So just like the sky, as I'm looking at all this information here, I'm gonna have to lighten it up just a little bit. On camera, it's not too terribly crazy, but up in here, I want to lighten some of that up just a little bit. This layer of color, the yellows and the goldens go onto the water. But now that I have the blue established, I can put those yellows and oranges into the water again. Before, if I put the yellows and oranges in first, it would be a little more difficult to put the blue on second. Not always, just sometimes. So I'm just setting this sand in place. I'm pretty happy with the color combination here. I don't think the photograph looks darker than what I have, but I'm not going to go any darker. I think that would be a little overwhelming if it got any darker than what it is. Because in life, it probably wasn't that dark. Just stepping back for a second, taking a look at things. Okay. I think I'm gonna work on the little sliver of water, little sliver of the background water. Get that kind of settled out. Now it looks like there's like a little wave in the distance, a little bit of buildup. So since it's a little difficult to read, I'm not going to go crazy trying to make it exact. I'm just going to try and give some hints of let the viewer decide what they see, you know? I'll go a little bit of the swooping. Little bit the blue. And these are the same colors that I've used so far. So I'll have to add to it, right? Can't really stick with the same exact colors for so long. There's a little bit of turquoise from the sky. And then I'll have to go one shade lighter in the blue. Get some of that distant crash. Again, I don't want this crashing water to stand out so much. I want people to know it's there. But if I make it too bright, it's going to look in your face and it's not going to be right. just little hints of it. Since I changed the composition a little bit from what's there, fudging some of this information in here. And that's what's fun about, the sunset over the ocean. You can throw in so many colors into the crash of the waves. There's all those lavenders and turquoise and blues and just so much extra. Oh, the one thing to think about too, we have these dark little shadowy lines of the water rolling in. The distance, they're not quite as strong in value. Like just like your horizon line, a lot of times things soften in the distance. So this is no exception. Got a little bit of softening, which that becomes a nice little challenge in and of itself, trying to find the right color to soften things up. It's got some of that green in it that I was telling myself not to do. I'm kind of making that a little bit bigger than what it is so I can put other colors on top of it. I think I'm going to go find some purple. A little bit of a gray. Yeah, a little bit of a gray lavender up here. Again, I can go a little thicker in the application of the line itself, just so I can put other stuff right up on top of it. Of course, this stick is kind of big, so to get that little gentle sideline there can be a little challenging. A little sweep up there. Again, I know there's going to be some color sitting on top of this, so. See a little bit of a barrel there coming down in a couple of spots. So it's up to you if you really want to mess with putting some of those barrels rolling in as you see them. Before I'm getting a little excited, so I have to to make myself step back for a second, because when I get a little excited about all these little details, I can get myself into big trouble. So I'm going to step again, because I'm getting towards, I'm past the halfway point. So this is when you have to slow yourself down, even though you're ready just to rev up and get it done. Little bits. I'm lightening up the colors in this wet sand. Just a little bit. I know I have to I will have to set that in place. I will have to kind of push that in a little bit. But I want to lighten it up just a touch. It's the same exact color. Okay. Some of those pinks, they get a little too dull. Drive you nuts. They're either too dull or too bright. When they're too bright, that's frustrating. When they're too dull, that's frustrating.
Or if you don't have any, it's frustrating.
There's that.
Pinks are hard to come by, it seems to me.
Really, they are. They're not in a lot of sets. That's the color I have the least of. I have
Yeah.
the least amount of pinks, and you need them. And there's such a variety out
Pink.
there what you need. Like, you know, the combinations of the red pink, the fuchsia pink, the hot pink, like there's so many you need a lot. Because whatever the undertone is, you know, if you try and lighten a hot pink and it turns magenta and that's not what you want it, you know, so it's crazy. This pink I'm not particularly fond of, but I know I'm gonna put some oranges on top of it, settle it down a little bit. So this is where we have to play with color mixing. And if you're not confident of mixing on your paper, certainly put a couple layers of what you're working with down so you can see how they act on top of one another. And again, I have to just remind myself, I don't need it to be exactly like the image. I just need a nice representation of what I want it to be, right? We don't have to be 100% copy. That's no fun too. I keep grabbing this one and getting myself in trouble. I should put this aside because it's only for the buildings.
Back
Only for the
away.
buildings. Yeah, that one's done too. I can't use that one either. So this is like a gentle dance back here. You know, I'm putting in all these colors. You know, I'm forcing myself to step back a lot because, you know, these colors back in here, this can really become a muddy mess because if you keep looking at the photograph, you realize that there's not yellow, you know, it doesn't follow. It's got all the colors at once. Every single section has goldens and pinks and oranges and, you know, every single section. So to try to get all of that represented can be a little overwhelming at times. So, and still keep the pattern of the water. So this is the slowdown. Looks a little garish right now, I can say for sure. In your face. So I'm going to come back in with some blue. Thin out some of that line. Gently dance it across the top of those oranges and goldens. And what that does is that breaks it up just a little bit. We all know blue and orange play so nicely together. It's a nice little combo. Use some of that turquoise. There's a lot of turquoise in the crash too, which is fun. Throw a lot of that in there. Don't be afraid of a little up motion on that line of that little shadow line coming in, because it's a little heftier. So it has a little bit of a roll to it. It's not totally flat in spots. So don't forget, if you get a little crazy and a little heavy handed, get your paintbrush out and knock some things down if you need to. So I'm gonna have to go, let me look at this. There's a lot of value shifts happening. There's some more. Purple, purple, purple. So yellow's that trick. I'm seeing all this yellow back in here, but you know, it's not so bright. So it's all that trick of layering. So you can get it in there and then you got to tone it down right away. But you can't, it has to be multiple colors to do it. You can't just pick that perfect orange yellow, and you can't just pick that perfect yellow. It's got to be a combination of things. All right, this is standing out as really dark online, or on the computer screen. So I'm going to adjust that a little bit. There we go. So my blue, my lightest blue, I'm going to leave it sit for a minute. I feel like I could go lighter. I want to push some of this lighter. On screen, it looks pretty light, but in person, it looks pretty dark. So I'm going to let it be before I make that jump to anything lighter, let that sit for a minute. So the mark making here has just been just a little, kind of honestly, just a little squiggly. I don't want any, where the crash is, I'm not really going crazy. It's just a little squiggly. And then some of it still comes out into here. So I can take this light lavender and give hints that the water's coming out even further. Now, if that stresses you out, you don't have to put that in, so I'll be playing with that. I forgot that I hadn't settled some of that out first. I just heard an email. Let me see. Nope. Old brush. Okay. So before I do more, I've got enough layers that I can go back to using my pinky instead of the pipe insulation. Okay. So, I'm looking at some of this stuff up here. If you want to use a pastel pencil, you can, or you can actually take a regular pencil to just give little hints. Of the movement that's happening. But that's what I like about, clouds and water, and they're constantly moving. You can make it whatever you want it to be. This could be all smooth sand with no ripples and no extra movement, or it can be exactly what you want it to be. All right, I'm going to put in the reflections of the buildings. So it's just this kind of cool pull down. So I wanted a clean spot. So I kind of cleaned off the pastel. I can't use the whole stick, right? Because the whole stick is too big. So I'm going to be kind of tilted up. So I'll just have this top part on here at first. And I'll clean it off. Just a quick set and pull. Right? Just a little set and pull. That's a little much. Luckily, the color is the right color that it will blend in. This one, the one that's on the left, has a stronger presence than the one on the right. And if you don't like it, if that stresses you out, take it away. You don't have to have a reflection completely in the water like that. I'm adding this darker color with it just to give it a little oomph. Kind of like that. Break up some of it like it is in the photograph with some of that purpley magenta. Look into some of my grays now, my lavendery grays. I don't like the way some of this is kind of dulled out over here. So I'm just going to pick some other neutrals to work with. Throw in a little bit of that into the wet sand. If you want, some of that foam there, you can tackle that too. And just take a quick look and see if I want to. You can use little bits of kind of lavendery. And some of the lights coming in, so I can use some of that blue. Well, it's kind of all kinds of colors. Like I said, the more you look, the more you see. See a little bit of purple coming in. I'm going to use some pipe insulation on what I just put down, mainly because I'm still really thin on my layers. Okay, so now I'm at that point where I can pull into the water there. Just a little bit. But it's got some lavender hanging out on the edges in some spots. As you can tell, I'm not doing an exact replica of what's there. I do have a hard time with patience with myself with doing an exact replica. Too bright. Layer, layer, layer. So remember, gentle touch, because so much of this will turn into a dull, muddy mess. And especially over the sand. You know, when we're over the sand, it's like it's already got that little bit of darkness underneath it. It can certainly easily switch to too dark. Mm. I did a similar one of this a while ago in a pretty large format. It was like 16 by 28 or something like that. It was fun, but I used a lot of that sparkly pastels.
I love them.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But
And
go ahead.
I don't even know that I do it, and I showed my daughter and she said, oh, look at the sparkle. And I, I'd forgotten and I don't see it, it has to be hit a certain way that it really picks it up.
Yeah, it has to pick up the light in just such a way, but it's definitely fun. That's a lot darker than that. This whole curl down here, the paper is curling up on the bottom. It drives me nuts. Okay. That's pretty done. Again, just a little shuffle. So down here where the wet sand is all kind of mixing in with the water there, it can look a little muddy and still be okay because of the colors that are kind of just hanging out together. But now that I'm gonna move up a little bit, I'm gonna be a little more careful about how the colors touch one another. Another tricky thing that I need to step back and take a look at is, it looks all right on screen, is how it goes up. You don't want anything coming up at you, so you got to check some of your angles and how they come into each other, making sure that we don't raise things up, make them look like they're coming at you. I'm gonna grab my white charcoal pencil here and just testing out some of the foam pieces here. They're kind of zigzagging down. Now the foam has, all kinds of shadows on it and stuff. If I do that foam, I kind of am committing myself to this foam up here. That's not bad. I can come back in to think about that, to come back in with something that's going to shadow it, but not make it look like I have weird lines. I'm just setting a few in place and see how it goes. Let's see. New. Let's see. It's always such a trick to find a neutral that's not any one in particular color that I can use as a shadow. See if my pencils have anything that strike me. Oh, that's my doctor's office. I'm going to put you guys on hold. Okay, so I was pulling out one of the darker navy blue pencils. Oh, this is nice. Just a gentle touch. I'm just kind of dragging. There's a little shadow under some of the foam that I can gently place in there. And then I'll take a step back and see if I still like it. Because sometimes that happens where you put something down, you're like, oh, that's perfect. And you step back and you're like, oh my gosh, no, it's not. I think I need to soften it just a touch, maybe. A little extra blue. So this one is on the purple side. So pretty deep in value. But that's okay. Actually, this one might be nice because I could add more of those lines going up. If I need to tone it down, I can. So I had put some like just pencil markings in there. Now I can use this little bit of the darker. If you were in my portrait class, we use this purpley kind of color for around the eyes and stuff where you're just getting in some shadows, but it's not black and it's not, you know, that kind of stuff. I don't want to muddy things up, so I'm being super gentle with my touch. Barely hinting at stuff. All right, so now I need to step back and see if I have to lighten it up. Maybe just a scoosh. This is a gray. I'm just putting right up to it and with it, with the white, with the blue, with the purple. All right. Patty, I think I just, hold on. I'm gonna pause the recording for a second.